Good morning, kids. Today we're checking out a brand new video, well, kind of a brand new video from Popcroft Studios. It was an artist reboot of Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends. Let's hop in and see who he chooses and see the new story.
Welcome to the first episode of my Artist Reboots Grand Prix, where for 3 Mondays in a row I'm going to be taking some classic cartoons or stories and rebooting them in my art and storytelling style, adding my own creative twists to them, as if someone handed me the reins to a franchise and said, "Here, how would you handle these concepts and characters?" We're starting off today with a show that I loved as a kid, Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends, and I have some ideas for the other shows that I want to use next, but I'm not settled on any idea yet, so give me some ideas in the comments of what shows or stories or whatever you'd like to see rebooted in my art style. And if you're new here and you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe so you can see the next ones that are coming up, even after the Grand Prix, because this is a series that I honestly have a lot of faith in, and I intend to keep it going even after the Grand Prix is finished. But for now, Foster's Home rebooted. Let's go. Hit like if you want. Subscribe if you feel like. But either way, enjoy the show. Children naturally have very active imaginations, unsuppressed by the world yet having...
and of course we're starting off with Mac and Blue, aka the main two characters of the series.
...convinced them to be more grown up and realistic. But not all kids have an imagination so powerful as to create their imaginary friends into physical manifestation. Those who are able to do this are incredibly lucky, as they get to spend much of their childhood playing alongside a wonderful and bizarre being or creature who they can be their...
Okay, hold on. Pause just real quick. I actually like how you're giving Blue the ability to stretch like this. Because if you know the show, he can't really stretch. What he is all. That's it.
...selves around unapologetically. Unfortunately, with these imaginary friends being direct reflections of part of their creator's own subconscious, as they reach puberty and their personalities begin to go through more rapid changes, this has been known to cause their friends to go through changes as well, becoming often a lot creepier looking, along with sometimes becoming more manic or even violent and dangerous. Perhaps this is why a trend began long ago to encourage kids to get rid of their imaginary friends before they grew into their early teen years. They're often told to leave behind such childish things as their imaginary friends and embrace more grown-up habits. Mac found himself in this exact position in his summer before heading into 9th grade. For as long as he could remember, his best friend had been Blue, his own imaginary friend who often looked like a simple blue child's rendering of a ghost. Except his body couldn't float, and he wasn't a misty material, but more like a goopy sort of substance. Usually he could only shift his body in limited ways, sprouting arms or legs, or occasionally a short tail if he felt like it. But as Mac started to grow, Blue found he could do a little bit more. One day, Mac and Blue had been playing outside with some of Mac's old action figures when his older brother, Terrence, came outside and started taunting him for still playing with dolls. Mac just tried to ignore him at first, but eventually, Terrence took some of the toys and kept them away from Mac. Eventually, he even snapped the limbs off of Mac's favorite one. Furious, Mac stood up for himself, more than he usually would, and punched his brother square in the stomach. Terrence wheezed from the surprisingly hard hit, but then fought back that much harder. He grabbed Mac and pinned him to the ground, holding his arm behind him and shoving his face into the dirt, telling him to apologize and say that toys are stupid, telling him that everyone in high school is gonna think he's a loser if he still plays with them when he gets there. Mac refused to say anything, and Terrence kept twisting his arm harder and harder, and Mac screamed that Terrence was gonna break it. Finally, Blue had had enough, and his body started to grow, larger than it had ever been before. He sprouted tendrils from his sides, and he grabbed Terrence and lifted him into the air. He hurled him towards the house, and he hit the back door so hard that he smashed right through it. Soon after, their parents got home, and Terrence whined to them about how Blue had mutated into a monster and attacked him out of nowhere while he was just minding his own business. Mac and Blue tried to tell them that that wasn't how it happened at all, but his parents were already biased in the direction of Mac getting rid of Blue anyway, as they knew it was common for kids to give up their imaginary friends by the time they reached Mac's age. They told him that this was just part of the way the world works, and it was time for him to get rid of Blue. Mac was heartbroken by the order, but even he was starting to feel influenced by what everyone else said. Even in middle school, he'd been made fun of for still having Blue around. He didn't understand why growing up had to mean getting rid of things you enjoyed as a kid, but if everyone else was saying that's the way it was, then maybe he just had to go along with it. There were
That's
two
the way
ways to
it
get rid
was,
of an
yeah.
imaginary friend. One, the person
Human being was. That's the way it was. Not anymore.
who created them just has to ignore them. If they don't acknowledge the imaginary friend for a month or so and that friend doesn't find someone new to bond with, then they'll just fade from existence, absorbing back into the recesses of their creator's mind. Mac couldn't stand the idea of Blue just disappearing from the world, so he went with the other route, giving him up for adoption.
Oh man. First of all, love it. Second of all, oh, right in the feels, because I love this show. Who's
In
next?
Mac's hometown,
Milk!
there was a place that had been made by a woman named Madame Martha Foster. She believed that imaginary friends didn't need to be erased from existence, but instead could live on to be taken in by another child, one who may not have had enough imagination to create one of their own. She was met with skepticism and anger for quite some time after making her home, as many of the imaginary friends she took in were just past the brink of having mutated into more violent and dangerous forms. But she believed even
Past
this
the
was
brink?
just a natural
Oh.
part of the life cycle of an imaginary friend, and they still deserved the love of a good kid.
Okay, hold on. I like how you took these parts of Wilt that were like seemingly stitched back on, and instead made them kind of seemingly hairless. I mean, it's gross, but it's a good detail.
This stage. Plus, the home had tactics for handling and calming imaginary friends who got too out of hand. Reluctantly, Mac brought Blue to the home a week before high school started and was quickly met by the most beautiful girl he'd ever seen. Her name was
Frankie
Frankie
Foster.
Foster, daughter of the creator of the home, and she was just headed into her last year at the same school Mac was about to enter. She had a tendency to act like she was too cool for this place, but still loved it and intended to work at Foster's after she was finished school. Mac stumbled through his words trying to tell her that he didn't want to give up Blue, but that his parents were making him. She told him that he was in luck, that the home had a secret deal with kids in Mac's position. Madame Foster had never wanted to let her imaginary friend go either, so anytime a kid was forced into giving up their friend, the home would let them stay here and guarantee they would not be put up for adoption so long as their original creator came back a minimum of once a week to play with their old friend. Both Mac and Blue were ecstatic to
That's actually a pretty good deal. But unfortunately in the show, it was that Mac had to be there every day when he could after school to keep Blue. If he had missed even one day, Blue would be available for adoption right then and there.
to hear this. It seemed like the perfect setup, and Mac intended to just come back every single day after school to hang out with Blue and the other incredible imaginary friends they found here. Though, it wouldn't exactly pan out that way at first. Frankie had to attend to some other business, so Mac and Blue would spend the rest of the day getting toured around by an imaginary friend named Wilt.
Okay, hold on. Pausing just real quick to say, hey, wow, this is making him look a little creepy. Yeah, like, you're giving him a lot of human skin. And, I mean, it's a cool detail because his creator is Jordan Michael, but to just expose that is still a little creepy.
A red, lanky, basketball-loving friend who'd originally been created by none other than Michael Jordan. The now-retired basketball star had given Wilt up for adoption at age 12. Maybe if he'd kept him around a little longer to practice basketball with him, he wouldn't have been cut from his high school basketball team. But, as we all know, his career turned out pretty great all the same.
I didn't know that.
Wilt's room in the house actually had a spare bed, so Blue would be rooming with him, as well as two other new friends. A big purple bison-like friend named Eduardo, who's a bit of a fraidy cat, and a bizarre blend of a palm tree, ostrich, and airplane named Coco, who could seemingly create anything in the eggs she laid. By the end of the day, both Mac and Blue were feeling great about the setup. Mac would come by as promised every day for the next week, but did miss a couple of days once school started, then would miss more, and soon he was really just coming the once a week that he needed to. He was making new friends at school and did want to spend more time with them, but beyond that he found so many of the other students and teachers talked like growing up meant leaving so much of your childhood behind. Even just in the 9th grade, people were telling him that the time he spent on old childish pursuits should be focused on planning what career he wanted to have, all while telling him to pick a realistic one, which often translated to a boring one in Mac's eyes. Mac still didn't understand why everyone his age seemed so desperate to leave parts of themselves behind, but spending so much time around people that felt that way made him feel like that was just the way the world is. So he spent less and less time with Blue. His old friend was starting to think that maybe Mac really was just going to leave him behind.
I really hope that doesn't become the case in this story. And this world is creepy as all heck, but I like it. Who's next? Eduardo? Oh, it's Coco and Frankie. Hey, can't wait to see that. Cut! And we're back.
Now, in
With
spite of
Coco
grappling
and
with the
Frankie.
risk of losing his closest friend, things weren't all bad for Blue at Foster's. His new friends there were teaching him how to embrace the changes he'd gone through in terms of what he could do. Some of them had been given up for adoption at the same time that their creators had started going through puberty too, so they'd experienced upgrades to their abilities and forms as well. Sure, a lot of them had gotten a bit creepier looking, but they also unlocked a new potential. Some people claimed that so long as a kid kept their imaginary friend and maintained their sense of imagination, their friend's abilities could just become more abundant, like they were leveling up as their creator grew older. The
Love
only
it.
reason it was so rare for imaginary friends to reach their highest potential was because of the awkward stage of creepiness they all went through in their creator's early teen years, which often forced them to give up or get rid of their imaginary
Yeah,
friends
that's a
before they
downside.
could move through that awkward stage. Messing around with his elevated shapeshifting abilities, Blue found that after some practice, he could sprout wings and shift his arms into different states, even making them look more like Eduardo's big hairy arms, or even sprout a beak like Coco's. It seemed like the possibilities
Love
were
it.
endless. Unfortunately, they
Honestly, if Blue could do that in the show, that would have been really cool. But unfortunately, he never did any of that. He was just Blue.
wouldn't progress any farther if Mac stopped coming around and fueling Blue's growth with his own expanding imagination. Frankie started to notice after a couple months that Mac was coming by less and less, so one day she found him at school and asked him what was up. He told her that he was just trying to be more grown up, like everybody seemed to want him to do, and as much as he hated it, that meant spending less time with Blue. But Frankie's response to that was just an eye roll and a wry smile. She told him to come by Foster's after school that day, but to come up to the main office. She wanted him to talk to someone. He was secretly hoping he was just going to get to talk to her more one-on-one, but when he did as instructed, he found in the main
Okay, I know I shouldn't, but... Okay, it is Eduardo in the last one, not ahead of him.
office was an older woman. He never would have guessed it at first, but this was Madame Foster, the creator of the home. She was clearly older than his parents, but he couldn't understand how she didn't look far older still. The home had been around for over 60 years, and she must have created it when she was an adult. Yet this woman, who was likely over 80 years old, had a spring in her step like a fit 20-year-old. Madame Foster told Mac that if you hold on to your youthful excitement for life as you age, then you never really grow old. Frankie had told Madame Foster of Mac's situation, and she had some words of wisdom for the boy to clear up his confusion over what growing up really meant. She said that adults may have a better understanding of how the world works, but that most children truly understand how life works. It's supposed to be fun and exciting and embraced and enjoyed with all the enthusiasm and imagination you can muster. As you age, you should still embrace who you are and what you like at every stage, and don't let anyone tell you that you have to hide parts of yourself away, like your imaginary friends, to live a safe, acceptable life in the eyes of other people. Adults may know how to pay taxes and how to vote and how to write a resume, and those are all things Mac would have to learn how to do someday, but he should never let any of the things he learns about the world kill the spark of excitement that we all have in us as kids.
Exactly.
A lot of adults do lose it and become bitter and cynical, and in doing so, they subconsciously think they have to encourage others, like their kids, to do the same, mistaking it for becoming more mature. But just because so many people do lose that spark, that doesn't mean that you have to. Mac had never been happier to hear anything in his life. He thanked Madame Foster and hugged her, then ran off to go find Blue.
Honestly, this one is actually pretty damn good. Like, I don't know what it is about the Frankie design, but it's fitting. Don't know why.
Mac quickly found Blue and apologized for growing distant. He told him that he did...
The biggest, funniest, and friendliest of the imaginary friends, Eduardo. He likes potatoes.
have friends at school that he wanted to keep getting to know, but that he promised to come by more often, and that he was not going to abandon Blue. After spending a few minutes pretending not to forgive him, Blue finally caved, and they got back to hanging out as usual, with Blue showing off more and more of the ways his abilities were evolving. Madame Foster's words would be etched permanently into Mac's mind. Some people at school would consider him to be a weirdo for so willingly and openly embracing childlike habits, like playing with toys or spending time around imaginary friends, but by doing so, people like him, who wanted to keep their sense of youthful excitement for life alive, were able to find him, drawn in by his unapologetic enthusiasm. He started bringing his new friends, Craig and Lauren, to hang out at the home after school.
Wait, hold on. Just a question, but why does Eduardo have a piece of his horn missing? I mean, he doesn't have that, like, in the show. Well, huh. Oh, you know what? No, I figured it out. It's because him, as being the biggest, is always one of the toughest fighters. Like, a prime example is that in the first movie that technically starts off the series, we see him face off against one of the, damn, I forget what they're called. The dangerous imaginary friends.
And these friends started becoming close with Blue's roommates. They'd keep coming back all throughout high school, and because they'd spend so much time with Eduardo, Coco, and Wilt, their connection meant that these imaginary friends started evolving further again, fueled by the imaginations of Mac's friends.
Yeah!
They would all go through a phase of looking creepy and a bit awkward at times, and anytime they tried to take the friends out in public, they'd be met with fear and disapproval, but the group just did their best to smile through it with each other's support. And as the kids reached their late teens, the imaginary friends they were bonded with grew out of their awkward phase and became more evolved and friendly looking once again. There would always be people that would tell this group to grow up and act their age, not realizing that this was just deep-seated resentment for the fact that they'd allowed the world to teach them to be cynical and abandon what brought them joy. Mac and his friends just got better and better at ignoring this, and their time spent letting their creative, imaginative inner selves flourish meant they grew up not needing the approval of others, and going after careers that they knew would make them genuinely happy and feel as alive as adults as they had as kids. Mac would even have a huge influence on someone he thought was past saving. Mac's brother, Terrence, who went off to university despite not wanting to, but thinking that was just what you were supposed to do, would eventually come around to see that his dorky little brother seemed to be living a way better life than anyone else he knew, in spite of so many people thinking he was a weirdo. When he'd come home from breaks from school, he'd gradually start trying to be nicer to his little brother. Eventually, Mac even invited him to come hang out at Foster's and get to see that all the people who spent time there, allowing themselves to be dorky and weird, were happier than almost anyone else he knew. He even found that there was a super aggro group of friends at the home that had to be kept in a separate part of the grounds for their violent nature, called the Extremosaurs, that Terrence was very drawn to. They got their kicks by fighting each other and loved a good competition. Terrence would even notice how afraid of these big, freaky friends Eduardo was, and would encourage him to come around more often to see that, even though they were big and tough, they were nothing to be scared of. Without even realizing he was doing something nice, Terrence would help Eduardo move past part of his fearful nature. On top of all that, though, Terrence ended up spending so much time watching their brawls with each other that he got the idea to start an imaginary friends wrestling league, as he was sure there were other friends out there who would want in on something like this, and plenty of people who would enjoy watching it. Despite his parents thinking he was being irresponsible and outright nuts, Terrence dropped out of school and got a part-time job while spending all his free time building up this league on the side and trying to get sponsors for it. It started with just some small events in his hometown, but as more and more people heard about it and thought it sounded awesome, it expanded and grew until it became a full-blown national sport being televised across the country. Terrence found that, while there were many challenges in building this career, he woke up every day excited, something he hadn't...
Oh yeah, you could call it the Imaginary Fight League, the IFL.
Experienced for years until he started paying attention to how his dorky little brother had actually been living life right all along. Despite being at each other's throats constantly as kids, the brothers would become close friends as adults, as they now both live their lives helping the world see the good that can come from embracing your inner passions and true self and keeping your youthful spark alive no matter what age you reach.
Honestly, I love this one. It was like, alright, what will be the first? Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends? Yes!
Honestly, now I just really want a set of stories about imaginary friend pro wrestling. That part of the story was kind of tacked on at the end, but That's also the part I'm most interested in now. By the way, there will be a poster with all of the art from this episode on it, and I'll have that linked in the pinned comment, along with previous episodes of Artist Reboots, where, till this point so far, this series has mostly focused on taking goofy old comic book characters from Marvel and DC and rebooting them into either the MCU or the modern-day Suicide Squad. I'll have those videos linked in the pinned comment as well. But besides that, that's all for today, except of course we're ending this video on some kind of positive or inspiring note, and the thought I want to leave people with today could really just be the moral from this story of being your unapologetic self and staying in tune with your inner child. But I heard just today a quote from Alex Hormozy that I really liked, which is, "Power follows blame." So whoever it is in the world that you blame for how you feel about your life and yourself is who you are actively giving power to. Whereas if you acknowledge to yourself that yes, there are people that do things I don't like, but you still take responsibility for how you feel and how you interact with the world, you are then actively giving yourself the power to make whatever changes it is you need to make. I hope that's inspiring. I love you all, and I'll see you all in the next episode on Friday. Goodbye.
Well, everyone, that's going to be the end of today's video. I hope you all enjoyed this. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Link to the original will be in the description below, and I'll see all you folks next time when we flick on. Peace out.